Executive Nicole Thompson wasn't just requesting her pre-ordered meal that day on United Flight 1247, but when flight crew questioned her meal eligibility, 312 passengers discovered something that would transform airline food service forever. Executive Nicole Thompson settled into her premium economy seat aboard United Flight from Chicago to Denver with the analytical mindset of someone who had spent 19 years revolutionizing airline food service as Director of Airline Catering Operations for Skydyne International, a premium aviation catering company that provided gourmet meal services to over 40 airlines worldwide with annual contracts exceeding $2 billion and responsibility for feeding millions of passengers through innovative culinary programs. At 45 years old, she carried herself with the operational authority that comes from earning a degree in culinary arts and hospitality management, accumulating extensive experience in large-scale food production and aviation catering logistics, and developing expertise in airline meal service that had revolutionized passenger dining experiences through premium ingredient sourcing and quality control systems. Her credentials included membership in the International Flight Catering Association's Executive Board and numerous professional achievements that established her as one of the leading authorities on airline food service in the United States, with direct responsibility for overseeing meal production facilities and food service delivery across continental and international destinations. Today's flight to Denver was taking her to oversee implementation of a new premium meal service program for a major airline client, though she was traveling as a regular passenger rather than in her typical executive capacity. Her casual business attire reflected her preference for experiencing airline service from a passenger perspective, allowing her to evaluate food service quality without the special attention that usually accompanied her executive position. Flight attendant Jennifer Walsh, a mid-level crew member with 4 years of airline service experience who had developed assumptions about passenger meal entitlements based on superficial observations, observed Nicole's meal request without recognizing the aviation food expertise that characterized someone who regularly made decisions affecting airline meal services throughout the aviation industry. Walsh's limited understanding of aviation catering operations led her to categorize Nicole as a potentially problematic passenger regarding food service. As Nicole requested her pre-ordered special meal, flight attendant Walsh immediately demonstrated discriminatory service patterns that violated United Airlines hospitality standards. "I'm sorry, but I need to verify that this special meal order actually belongs to you," Walsh stated with obvious skepticism while examining Nicole's boarding pass with unnecessary scrutiny. "Special meal orders require additional verification that I need to confirm before providing premium food service." Nicole immediately recognized the discriminatory nature of Walsh's approach and clear violation of airline meal service standards. "I have my meal confirmation and reservation details clearly indicating my pre-ordered dietary accommodation," Nicole replied with professional composure while observing the systematic discriminatory treatment. "What specific United Airlines policy requires additional verification beyond standard meal confirmation?" Walsh continued her discriminatory approach with additional questioning about meal entitlement that clearly exceeded standard airline procedures. "Ma'am, I need to ensure that premium meal services are provided to appropriate passengers who have legitimate dietary requirements," Walsh explained with obvious bias that violated airline hospitality standards. "Special meals represent additional costs that require appropriate passenger verification." Nicole observed Walsh's escalating discriminatory behavior with growing professional concern, understanding that such treatment constituted exactly the type of food service discrimination that could damage airline reputation. "Flight attendant Walsh," she said, while reading the crew member's name tag. "I believe your meal service verification procedures violate United Airlines hospitality standards. I'm requesting immediate access to my confirmed meal service without discriminatory questioning." Her aviation catering knowledge should have immediately alerted any trained airline crew member that they were dealing with someone possessing advanced catering expertise. As Walsh's discriminatory treatment continued with additional questioning about meal legitimacy that violated United Airlines standards, Nicole persisted in her catering assertions while requesting appropriate crew intervention. "I am formally requesting my confirmed special meal service without additional discriminatory verification procedures," Nicole stated with catering authority and professional expertise. "Your questioning procedures exceed standard United Airlines meal service protocols and constitute discriminatory treatment that violates aviation hospitality principles." Walsh responded to Nicole's catering assertions with increased resistance, interpreting her knowledge of airline food standards as inappropriate passenger behavior rather than recognizing obvious aviation expertise. "Ma'am, I don't appreciate passengers lecturing me about airline policies or food service procedures," Walsh replied with obvious hostility that demonstrated complete lack of understanding about aviation catering excellence. "I'm following appropriate meal verification procedures, and demanding special treatment doesn't change our food service protocols." Other passengers began witnessing the developing discrimination as Nicole's legitimate dietary accommodation was subjected to excessive verification requirements that clearly demonstrated profiling and bias in food service delivery. Flight Service Manager Michael Rodriguez, who had been monitoring the situation from the galley area, finally approached with growing awareness of meal service violations that were occurring. "Flight Attendant Walsh, what is the specific concern regarding this passenger's meal service request?" Rodriguez asked with supervisory authority and growing worry about discriminatory food service treatment. "Our United Airlines meal service policies require equal treatment for all passengers, regardless of appearance or assumptions about dietary accommodation legitimacy." Walsh attempted to justify her discriminatory treatment with explanations that revealed systematic passenger profiling and clear violation of airline meal service standards. Flight Service Manager Rodriguez immediately recognized the discriminatory nature of Walsh's meal service approach and the clear violation of United Airlines hospitality standards. Understanding that the situation represented exactly the type of food service failures that could result in passenger complaints and significant airline reputation damage. "Flight Attendant Walsh, these meal service approaches clearly violate our professional airline hospitality standards and constitute discriminatory passenger treatment," Rodriguez stated with supervisory authority. "All passengers with confirmed meal orders deserve equal access to food service regardless of appearance or assumptions about their dietary accommodation legitimacy." Nicole observed the intervention with professional satisfaction, while continuing to document the discriminatory treatment for potential airline industry review, understanding that the situation represented a clear example of the systematic food service discrimination that her catering advocacy worked continuously to eliminate. "Flight Service Manager Rodriguez, I appreciate your intervention, but this discriminatory treatment represents systematic meal service violations that require comprehensive documentation and airline industry accountability," Nicole explained with catering authority. "I will be pursuing appropriate channels to ensure that such discriminatory practices are eliminated from airline food service throughout the industry." Rodriguez attempted to address the situation through immediate meal service recovery, while growing increasingly concerned about the airline reputation implications that the discriminatory conduct had created. "Ma'am, I sincerely apologize for the inappropriate meal service approach and discriminatory treatment that you have experienced during our food service delivery," Rodriguez said, with obvious concern about airline reputation. We will immediately provide you with your confirmed special meal and ensure that you receive the professional airline food service that United maintains for all passengers. More passengers continued to witness the discrimination while expressing concern about the systematic nature of the discriminatory treatment and the airline's apparent failure to properly train crew members. Aviation consultant James Patterson, an airline industry professional who had been observing the situation, approached the seating area to provide industry expertise. "I'm an aviation consultant specializing in airline operations," Patterson announced with professional authority. "I've witnessed systematic discriminatory treatment that clearly violates United Airlines hospitality standards, and I'm prepared to provide industry testimony regarding these meal service failures." His aviation intervention created additional pressure for immediate meal service recovery while documenting the systematic discrimination. As the discriminatory treatment situation continued with multiple witnesses and clear documentation of meal service violations, Nicole maintained her catering focus while preparing for the industry complaints necessary to address the systematic discrimination and ensure appropriate accountability. "I am documenting these meal service violations for formal complaint filing with United Airlines corporate, aviation industry organizations, and Skydyne International evaluation protocols," Nicole announced with catering authority that demonstrated her comprehensive understanding of airline food service operations. This discriminatory treatment represents systematic meal service failures that require immediate corrective action and comprehensive crew training to ensure compliance with aviation hospitality standards throughout airline operations. Rodriguez recognized the serious airline implications that the situation represented, understanding that formal complaints could result in significant reputation damage if not properly addressed through immediate corrective measures. "We are committed to addressing these meal service violations through immediate corrective action and comprehensive review of our food service procedures," Rodriguez stated with supervisory authority. "Please allow us to provide appropriate meal service recovery and ensure that your dining experience meets the high United Airlines standards." Nicole continued her catering documentation while observing the airline response being implemented to address the food service violations. "While I appreciate the immediate meal service recovery efforts, this situation requires comprehensive airline industry review and systematic food service standard enforcement to ensure that discriminatory practices are eliminated," Nicole explained with catering expertise. "The systematic nature indicates institutional problems that require executive-level intervention and comprehensive aviation hospitality training reform." Consultant Patterson continued his aviation documentation while supporting Nicole's industry assertions and preparing for the airline complaints that would inevitably result from such clear meal service violations. This discriminatory treatment represents a clear pattern requiring immediate airline accountability and comprehensive aviation catering training reform, Patterson announced. Airline Captain Sarah Johnson, who had been monitoring the situation from the cockpit, finally approached the cabin with executive authority. Captain Johnson immediately recognized the magnitude of the meal service violations and airline liability that had been created through systematic discriminatory treatment, understanding that the situation required immediate executive intervention and comprehensive damage control. "I am Captain Sarah Johnson, and I have been monitoring this meal service situation from the flight deck," she announced with airline executive authority. "I recognize the serious food service violations that have occurred, and I am implementing immediate corrective measures to address these airline hospitality protocol violations." Nicole observed the executive intervention with professional interest while continuing her catering documentation and assessment of the airline response to systematic discrimination, understanding that appropriate accountability required comprehensive reform and executive-level commitment to aviation hospitality excellence. Captain Johnson, this discriminatory treatment represents systematic failures in crew training that require comprehensive airline accountability, Nicole stated with catering authority. I am preparing formal complaints with United Airlines corporate and aviation industry organizations to ensure that such discrimination is eliminated through appropriate corrective measures. Johnson recognized the serious industry implications that formal complaints would create for United Airlines, understanding that immediate corrective action was essential to prevent significant reputation damage. United Airlines is committed to eliminating discriminatory practices and ensuring equal meal service for all passengers according to professional aviation hospitality standards, Johnson replied with executive authority. We will conduct immediate investigation and implement comprehensive training to prevent similar violations. Nicole prepared to continue her documentation while accepting the immediate meal service recovery measures being implemented. While I appreciate the executive intervention and commitment to meal service reform, this situation will require ongoing industry oversight to ensure effective elimination of discriminatory practices, Nicole explained. I will be pursuing formal channels for accountability and systematic reform throughout airline food service operations. Consultant Patterson continued his aviation support while preparing for the industry complaints that would ensure appropriate accountability. As the situation continued with executive intervention and airline accountability measures being implemented to address the systematic discrimination, Nicole began revealing the depth of her catering expertise and familiarity with airline food operations that would soon transform everyone's understanding of her aviation authority and professional position within the international airline catering industry. Captain Johnson, I want to ensure that you understand the comprehensive industry implications of this discriminatory treatment, Nicole stated with obvious catering authority that demonstrated advanced knowledge of airline food operations. These meal service violations represent systematic failures in crew training that I have personally worked to prevent through comprehensive catering programs throughout the international aviation food service community. Johnson observed Nicole's detailed knowledge of airline food operations with growing professional interest and awareness that she was dealing with someone whose catering expertise exceeded typical passenger knowledge of aviation food service. Ma'am, your knowledge of our food operations is quite comprehensive, Johnson replied with executive recognition and growing respect for Nicole's professional expertise. Are you perhaps an aviation catering professional who has experience with food service operations? Nicole smiled with catering satisfaction while preparing to reveal the aviation authority that would completely transform the situation and demonstrate the magnitude of the meal service failures that had occurred within the airline catering industry she had helped revolutionize. Captain Johnson, I appreciate your recognition of my catering expertise, Nicole replied with growing authority. I believe this situation provides an excellent opportunity for comprehensive meal service review and crew training that will benefit airline food operations throughout the flight service system. Flight attendant Walsh, who had been observing the executive intervention with growing awareness of her meal service failures, finally began to understand the serious consequences of her treatment of a passenger who clearly possessed exceptional catering knowledge. I'm beginning to realize that I may have made serious mistakes in my meal service procedures, Walsh said with obvious concern. Nicole maintained her professional composure while preparing for the revelation that would demonstrate the true scope of the meal service failures within the airline catering industry. Continued to address the discrimination while implementing airline accountability measures, Nicole began to reveal her actual position within the international aviation catering industry and the food service authority that made her one of the most influential catering directors in the world's airline operations. Captain Johnson, I think it's important for you to understand that my interest in this situation extends beyond personal meal service discrimination, Nicole explained with increasing catering authority. I have comprehensive responsibility for airline food operations that makes this discriminatory treatment particularly concerning from an industry perspective. Johnson observed Nicole's catering language with growing professional recognition that she was dealing with someone whose authority went far beyond typical aviation knowledge, suggesting significant professional connection to catering operations and aviation meal service excellence. Ma'am, your catering perspective suggests that you may have professional experience with airline food operations, Johnson replied with executive interest and growing awareness of Nicole's potential catering connection to the airline industry. Are you perhaps a catering director who has worked with airlines on meal operations? Nicole prepared to reveal her actual catering position that would completely transform everyone's understanding of the situation and demonstrate the magnitude of institutional failures that had allowed such discriminatory treatment to occur within the airline catering industry she had spent her career revolutionizing. Captain Johnson, I appreciate your professional recognition, Nicole said, with growing catering authority. I believe this situation demonstrates the importance of comprehensive crew training that ensures appropriate treatment of all passengers and compliance with professional aviation catering requirements. Flight attendant Walsh watched the developing catering discussion with increasing anxiety and awareness that her discriminatory treatment had been witnessed by someone with significant aviation expertise within the airline industry. I'm becoming very concerned about the consequences of my actions, Walsh said with obvious worry. Consultant Patterson observed the catering dynamics that Nicole was demonstrating, while recognizing that the situation involved someone with exceptional authority within the airline catering business. The moment Nicole revealed her actual identity as Director of Airline Catering Operations for Skydyne International, one of the world's largest aviation catering companies serving over 40 airlines with annual contracts exceeding $2 billion, the extraordinary scope of her catering authority became undeniably apparent to everyone involved as they recognized that the discriminatory treatment had been directed against one of the most powerful food service executives in the international aviation industry. Captain Johnson, Flight Attendant Walsh, and everyone present, Nicole announced with full catering authority. I am Nicole Thompson, Director of Airline Catering Operations for Skydyne International, which provides premium meal services to over 40 airlines worldwide, including United Airlines, with annual food service contracts exceeding $2 billion and responsibility for feeding millions of passengers through innovative culinary programs and comprehensive quality control systems. The revelation created immediate shock among all airline crew members who understood that they had been subjecting one of the most influential catering directors to discriminatory treatment that contradicted everything she had worked to achieve in promoting inclusive airline catering excellence. Captain Johnson stood frozen with complete professional devastation as she realized that the discriminatory treatment had been witnessed by one of the most important figures in the international aviation catering community, who possessed the authority to influence airline food service contracts throughout the global aviation food service network. Director Thompson, I am profoundly embarrassed by the institutional failures and discriminatory treatment that you have experienced during our meal service operations, Johnson said with executive remorse. This situation represents exactly the type of food service violations that your catering leadership has worked to eliminate through comprehensive aviation hospitality excellence throughout the airline industry. Flight attendant Walsh realized with complete professional horror that her discriminatory conduct had been directed against one of the most powerful catering directors. Understanding that her actions represented career-ending violations of the hospitality standards that Nicole's food service empire had established throughout the international airline catering community. Director Thompson, I cannot express how sorry I am for my discriminatory treatment and complete failure to recognize your extraordinary catering expertise, Walsh said with obvious fear. I understand the devastating consequences of my actions and the violation of everything that airline food service represents regarding equal treatment. Nicole maintained her catering composure while addressing the systematic institutional problems that the incident had revealed within airline operations. This situation demonstrates that despite comprehensive catering partnerships, we still have systematic problems with meal service implementation that require immediate attention and comprehensive reform, she explained with catering authority. This is why truth always comes to light, and justice always finds its way. If this story shows you that dignity and respect matter more than assumptions, make sure you subscribe to see more stories where justice prevails. Because when we stand together against discrimination, we make real change happen. Following the extraordinary revelation and demonstration of how discriminatory practices could occur even within airlines that claimed to uphold professional food service standards, United Airlines immediately initiated sweeping reforms to crew training programs, meal service protocols, and discrimination prevention measures that would ensure systematic elimination of discriminatory practices throughout the airline and broader aviation catering industry. Flight attendant Walsh was immediately suspended pending investigation and faced potential termination for her discriminatory conduct that violated professional airline hospitality standards, while all flight crew personnel were required to complete enhanced diversity training that emphasized zero tolerance for discriminatory practices regardless of passenger demographics. The incident became a catalyst for aviation industry discussions about institutional discrimination and the importance of comprehensive meal service enforcement that extended beyond training programs to include systematic monitoring that would ensure actual compliance with food service excellence throughout airline operations. Nicole's response to the discrimination became a model for effective aviation catering oversight, as her comprehensive reform recommendations were incorporated into Skydyne international training systems and inspired other catering companies to strengthen their meal service compliance throughout the international aviation food service community. Within weeks of the incident, United Airlines had implemented new monitoring systems that would prevent similar discrimination and ensure appropriate recognition of meal service excellence, regardless of passenger demographics, while establishing Nicole's catering empire as industry leader in food service enforcement and discrimination prevention. The transformation extended beyond individual airline policies to influence broader conversations about institutional discrimination in the aviation catering industry and the critical importance of comprehensive professional oversight that ensured actual meal service implementation rather than mere policy development. Aviation organizations recognized the incident as a powerful example of how discrimination could persist despite professional standards, and used Nicole's experience to develop enhanced accountability measures that would ensure effective elimination of discriminatory practices through systematic oversight. Nicole's story became an inspiring example of how catering expertise could create positive institutional change while demonstrating the ongoing importance of food service vigilance that protected all passengers from discriminatory treatment, regardless of their position within the aviation catering industry. The lasting impact extended far beyond individual airline operations to influence how aviation companies approached meal service excellence. with Nicole's professional framework becoming a model for effective discrimination prevention that ensured actual protection of passenger rights through systematic monitoring and comprehensive catering accountability measures. But Nicole's story is just one example of how aviation expertise meets meal service discrimination. Next video. Watch what happens when a Black university president's 28-year secret is revealed during airport academic conference discrimination. When staff question her educational authority, the most shocking Ivy League credentials in higher education history emerge. You won't believe what happens when academic power meets institutional bias. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and turn on notifications for new content. Don't forget to hit the like button if this story moved you, and share your thoughts and opinions about this situation in the comments below.